The day has finally arrived when I'm going to be looking at a replacements track, and this has been much requested. There's obviously a lot of love for the replacements out there, and the track I've chosen, I Will Dare, not necessarily my favourite replacement song, though it is a great song, and it's probably one of their better known tracks. And the reason I chose this one is because there's plenty of interesting guitar stuff going on, including two guitar solos played simultaneously, and one of those guitar solos is played by Peter Buck from REM. So let me attempt to play a bit of this track and then we'll talk about it. This track taken from the 1984 album Let It Be, and I think that was the third Replacements album, and for me it was the first Replacements album that I really got into. And the earlier stuff is fun, it's noisy and punky, but it was really only round about this time that Paul Westerberg started to find his proper voice as a songwriter, I think, and the songs on this record and on the subsequent Replacements albums are just stunning. So I've attempted to do a little bit of research on I Will Dare, and apparently the main rhythm guitar parts, the jangly stuff, is all played by Westerberg, and he also played the mandolin stuff that you can hear coming in towards the end of the track. And I don't actually own a mandolin, otherwise I would have attempted to play some of that stuff as well. And then we've got the lead guitar stuff played by Bob Stinson, and that's the twangy riff and then the single note kind of parts that you can hear in the chorus. And then we've got those two guitar solos, and apparently the story goes that the track was finished and then Peter Buck came in and overdubbed a guitar solo over the finished track. So Bob Stinson had already done a very nice guitar solo, and then you got Peter Buck's solo over the top of that. So that's why you've got that quite unusual sound of those two solos competing with one another. Let's get to it. Let's talk about some of that stuff. So the opening riff then. A great riff, and there's more to it than you might think. I think once the band kicks in, all you can really hear is kind of the jangly stuff on top. But if you listen closely at the very start of the tune, you can hear the bigger chord forms that are being used throughout the riff. So we've got three chords here. We've got a G, going to an A7, and then we got, I suppose it's kind of an E minor 11 chord, and then we're going back to the A7. Now the G that's being used is this one. It's the so-called rock G, where you've got the two fingers at the third fret on the top two strings. And for this riff to work, you're going to need to just keep your little finger on that high G note throughout the riff. So we're going from here to the A7, so I'm barring across the D, G, B with my first finger. My little finger is still on that high G. And then we got this chord. Let's say it's an E minor 11 chord. We've got an open low E string in second fret on the A, got an open D, second fret on the G, and then those two fingers on top, just like in the G chord. So E minor 11 chord. At first I thought it was this slightly more common E minor 7 chord, the kind of Wonderwall chord, but if you listen really closely you can actually hear that A note in there, which is what leads me to think that it's probably this E minor 11 chord that he's playing. So and then we're back again to the A7. So if we put all of that together, and we're playing this with a nice swinging down up strum in your strumming hands. So 1 and 2. Moving on to the chorus, the basic chords are quite simple. It's just E minor to C, all simple open chords, D, and then back to C, and then got a sneaky E7 right at the end of the chorus, which is a nice addition, I think. So that would work as the chorus chords. But what I think Westerberg does, and it's quite hard to hear this on the studio recording, but he certainly does this live, and there's some great solo live performances that you can see on YouTube. And what he's doing is he's playing the vocal melody on top of these basic chord shapes. So the vocal melody is just this. You just play that all on the B string. It's just D, C, B, C, D. And you can put that on the top of the E minor chord. And you can do the same thing on the C chord. Now, it's a little bit harder to do on the D chord, but it kind of is possible here. I'm leaving out the top note of a D chord, and I'm just playing this shape here. And then C. And then that A7. So that's a really nice way of playing the basic chords but also supporting the vocal melody. So that, I think, is the basic chorus part. It's probably worth mentioning the chords that are happening underneath the guitar solo. So that's just F to D7, F, G7. And then there's a little build into the second half of the solo, which is just a G or a G7. And then it just goes round again. So F, D7, F, G7. The lead guitar parts, and I'm assuming these are played by Bob Stinson. We've got this great single note riff. And that's played in the intro, and it's played throughout the verses. Starting on the low E string, we just got G, F, and then an open A. And then we've got the hammer on from A to B, and A again, then we've got D to A. And you've got a choice. You can play that D as an open string, or you can play it up at the 5th fret on the A string if you wanted to. And then second half of the riff, we just got B, C sharp, D, C sharp. So if I put all of that together, and I think the coolest thing about this riff is the timing. Notice how we're coming in on an upbeat. We're coming in on the and of 4. So we've got 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. And again here. So listen to the record, make sure you get the timing right on that riff. Now for the chorus, Stinson is essentially just playing the vocal melody on the B string, so just like in the Westerberg guitar part. Actually, a new discovery I made about this track while I was listening carefully to it this week is, in fact, you've got a high kind of droning string in there. So, and in fact, the droning note that you can hear, it is a D, so it makes me think that Stinson's probably tuned his high E down to a D, so you can let that high D note ring throughout this riff, and it sounds really great once you do that. So. And then at the end of the phrase we've just got a descending melody, D, C, B, G, and we've got that open high D in between each of those notes. Let's talk about the Bob Stinson solo then, and I think this is an excellent little solo. It's a little bit of a shame that it's buried behind the Peter Buck solo and it's a bit hard to hear exactly what's going on, but I think I've got the general gist of it here. He starts off low down and he's just outlining the basic chords that Westerberg is playing. So the first bit is something like this. We got so outlining an F chord, just kind of picking out some notes from an F bar chord. And we're going to D7, so just playing out of this little shape here. So 5, 4, 5 on the A, D and G strings. More F chord stuff. Then we're going to G7, so just playing some notes out of that G7 chord. And then repeating the first riff. And then we've got that kind of triplet build up on the drums. And I think Stinson is doing this. Just double stops here, so we've got a B and a D. And just moving that same shape higher to the 6th and 7th frets. And then into the second half of the solo, and we've got this great kind of country lick. Really nice lick, and note-wise we've got a G hammering onto A and C. And then we're sliding up from D to E, and we've got this G, and then the same kind of move going from A to B, and then a D, and then coming back to that B. So and the first time we've then got this, which is a D triad. We've still got the high E tuned down to a D, so if you just bar across the top 3 strings, you've actually got a major triad. So arpeggiating that, playing that same lick, and this time we're going to a G7 chord, and Stinson is just playing or kind of notes from the chord, kind of chord tones really. We've got the riff again, and going to D once again, and then taking that same triad shape up to the 10th fret, which is an F triad, and then we just got this single note ending, so G, B, C, D. The whole solo, let me put all of that together. Let's check out the Peter Buck solo. It's another nice solo, again quite country flavoured, and again he's outlining the basic chords that are being played over, so lots of chord tones, lots of thinking out of chord shapes. So the whole solo is really based off of this simple lick, and that lick recurs several times in this solo. It's played down here, it's also played higher up the neck as well. So the basic idea is this: we've got a little mini bar at the 1st fret on the high E and B strings, so we've got a C and an F note, and we're hammering on to the 3rd fret on the B string, so C to D, and then we're playing that high F note. So the actual first phrase of the solo is this. So we've got our lick, and then we're playing an A note. So you could think of this as outlining the F chord, and it's all chord tones here. We've got F, C and A. That's the root, the fifth and the third of the chord. The D note that you're adding in is the sixth. So that's nicely outlining our F chord. Then the harmony is going to D7 and Bucky's going something like that. So we're sliding up to an F sharp and then got a high F sharp. So that's again a chord tone. It's the third of the chord. We repeat our opening lick and then just playing some notes out of the G7 chord. So a little bit hard to hear exactly, but I'm just kind of playing the open D, G, B and then the F on the top string. And I'll lick once again. And this time I'm playing the full D7 chord shape. And then we've got the build and Bucky's just repeating our lick. Then we're into the second half of the solo and we're just moving our lick 12 frets higher. So, and then we're moving to D7, and this is just a D7 chord shape moved 12 frets high, just sliding into that. We've got our lick again, and this time we're moving to G7. So you can think out of this shape here. So I've got a bar at the 12th fret and then a high F, our lick, more D7 stuff, and then I'm just ending with the same single notes that we had at the end of Stinson's solo. Let me put all of that together then. 2, 3, 4. Let me tell you a bit about the gear that I'm using today, and I've no idea what the replacements would have used gear wise on this recording, and I don't think they were the kind of band that were too fussy or precious about their gear and had to use particular amps or guitars, but I've seen them using all kinds of stuff in pictures, and Paul Westerberg in particular you quite often see with a Les Paul Junior. So for that reason I grabbed my Shergold Provocateur, which I know it's very different from a Les Paul Junior, but it's got that kind of vibe and it's got a little bit of that kind of sound for me. So I thought this guitar worked well for this particular song, and it works well with kind of punky poppy stuff like the replacements. So that's the guitar. The amp I'm using is my Marshall Studio Vintage series, a couple of pedals, got some overdrive from a J Rocket Archer, and also using a little bit of chorus. I think I can just detect a little bit of a chorus sound on Westerberg's guitar on this track, so I'm using my Ibanez Chorus Mini. Then I thought I'd mix it up a bit for the two guitar solos. So for the Stinson solo I was using my Telecaster, which is a 52 reissue Telecaster, and using my Jazzmaster, an American 65 vintage reissue Jazzmaster for the Peter Buck solo. That's it for today's video. Of course, full tab and the backing track are going to be up on my Patreon page. Thanks very much for watching. I shall see you next time.